Good
Yeah.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are
Hi,
you?
Rochelle.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So, will you please tell us your name and share anything with us to help us get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Shreya Hurli. I'm an econ undergrad at Duke. Um, I really enjoy like a lot of analytical stuff, debate, writing, research. Right now, I'm involved in like computer science research, and I hope to go to law school.
Oh, wonderful. You're going to become a lawyer. That sounds very exciting. With the technology background, that's even better, right?
I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to like combining both of those things and
Uh,
like getting to do both.
Well, I think that's an amazing thing to do because, like with emerging technologies, they are poised to disrupt a lot of systems and disrupt a lot of populations. So it's really good that you are considering that. And I wish you all the best in that.
Thank
So,
you.
where's home?
I'm from Columbus, Indiana.
Okay. And are are you married, or do you have children? You have brothers and sisters? You tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I live with my parents, my mom and my dad, and I have a younger sister.
Okay, excellent, very good. So I want to ask you, the way these chats work is usually from things that you say when we do our introduction, they kind of lead where the conversation goes. So I want to ask, what is it like to be you at Duke, in America, in Maryland, anywhere? What is it like to be you? Can you tell us what your experiences are as a woman of color?
Yeah, I don't know that I have the same experiences as I think the main difference for me is coming from an Asian American background. The experiences that I've had, like as a child, or like that inform my cultural context and the way that I like perceive things or like make decisions is like slightly different from like the I guess mainstream like more like I guess typical American perspective or even like a white American perspective.
Mhm.
Like I don't know that I've like ever felt held back in any way, but it is like a little bit of work to like communicate and like find I guess not common ground exactly, but to like get across my perspective and where I'm coming from, and like what might have informed that.
And do you think that would make any difference with your intelligence and your personality if you were not a woman of color, if you were white, say, or I don't know what the other construct might be, but do you think it would make any difference as to who you are and what happens in the experiences you have?
I mean, definitely. I think like when like you're like anyone's culture, like the culture that they grew up in, informs how they just make decisions, like what they see as norms, and the way they behave. So like I think definitively like if I had not like been raised by parents who are from India, like I think that like the the cultural values and the just yeah, like a lot of that would have been different, I think. And like the exposure and experiences that I've had, like every couple years, like we do go visit family in India sometimes. Yeah, like those things are super different, I think.
And so, if I understood what you said, that you haven't found it difficult because of your gender or because of your color of your skin to navigate the American way, if you will.
Yeah, I think like in the sense that like in the sense of opportunity, like the respect that people afford me in like conversations, interactions, like I don't feel like I've experienced a lot of like disrespect or like getting held back in some ways. But I think the one area that is like maybe a little bit challenging is communicating from like through cultures, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. That makes perfectly good sense. So the purpose of these chats is to find out what people's experiences are, to have them tell their story. And I mean,
Hmm.
sounds like your story is pretty good. I mean, like you have been able to find your way, you're achieving great things, you're gonna hopefully be a lawyer one day, and you're going to hopefully change the world as well. But right now, what's happening around us, right? So
Yeah.
we have black and brown people dying for
Mm-hmm.
reasons that are not logical. We have years of oppression for almost all people. I mean, even and as I understand, the ideal person, like so white male is like the best, but then you come right behind that with Asians, right? So, and I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how you split that apart, like between India, Asia, and China, Asia, and Japan, Asia, and all these other places. Like, but there is some balance between being white and being Asian that
Yeah.
doesn't always present itself as you just described as challenging or feeling, like how do I get my point across, and how do I, make sure that I'm recognized and appreciated for what I bring to the table. So it doesn't sound like you've had any experiences like that would suggest being a woman of color. And I don't know if you self-identified that way. Maybe you don't identify as a woman of color. I don't know how you do that, but I mean, just what is the experience from your lens? What does the world look like from the seat you're in? And that's really what I'm asking. And even considering how you see black people, how you see white people, how you see Hispanic or Latinx people, how do you see gender? How do you see this? And I think from what you described earlier, you've had a pretty good view, and the view has not been harmful, for lack of a better word, to you. So when you look at these other communities that are struggling with that, how do you
Mm-hmm.
see the world?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky in that sense. And I also think that growing up in an area like Columbus, Indiana is like fairly multicultural, although it is like pretty much majority white. Like I live in Indiana. I think that's definitely also informed my perspective because coming to Duke was my first experience of diversity on such a like on an even greater scale
Mhm.
than when I lived at home. So yeah, I definitely like coming from that perspective. Um, I really like I hadn't before coming to Duke. I think I did not consider race or gender nearly as much as I did after starting my undergraduate experience. Um,
Why is that? What made it stand out once you came to Duke?
I think exposure to minority groups that are more disadvantaged and like come from a place where they can speak to experiences of disadvantage or issues with the way race relations are or like gender relations are in America, as opposed to where I'm from, which a majority of the people that are of color immigrated via like job related reasons and usually to work in engineering. So I think that's like a very different experience. Like there's a lot more Asian immigrants that maybe don't have the same experiences as someone who has been like historically disadvantaged in America.
Yeah, and that makes perfectly good sense. So when you look out and you see, did you watch the video of Mr. Floyd's death? Did you see that?
I've seen parts of it. I honestly have to say I couldn't really bring myself to watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of young people that they could not watch the whole thing. You know, what puzzles me is what happened with his death that brought this to this movement we're in right now, where people are thinking about how to rethink diversity and inclusion, equality, all these things that we're faced with. Why was his death so poignant in delivering that kind of message and getting us geared up to, speak louder for our rights?
Yeah. I I don't know. I think um like I've been wondering about that and I definitely like know that me and my friends have like talked about like why now as opposed to any of the previous times that an African American person has been murdered by the police.
Mhm.
And um part of it I think it might have to do with simply like the fact that the country has been under a lot of pressure like in this time and so there is maybe a like people are more ready to react. They're more done with the way that things are. But yeah, I think that's been kind of what I've been thinking.
So when you think about, I don't know whether you studied this in school at all, undergraduate or high school or even middle school, what have you learned about African Americans and slavery and Jim Crow? What have you learned, and how do you see that being pertinent today?
Yeah. Yeah, like throughout like middle school and high school, we did discuss slavery in an American history context. Um, Simply through school, I think a lot of what was focused on was the historic trauma and the like brutality of what people experienced. Maybe what wasn't communicated as much was like how that might connect to the present day.
And,
And I think that that might actually be what's missing in the like in like historically through in the conversation when people talk about like disadvantaged minorities today is like if you've not been exposed to or like helps to make that connection, sometimes it just feels like stuff like oh like that was the past and then it doesn't and that doesn't inform people's perspectives as much and that might contribute to like a lack of empathy about what's happening today.
absolutely. So when you hear Black Lives Matter, what do you think?
I think about the fact well I think I separate the slogan from the movement a little bit. Like I'm not really fully I don't know that I fully understand what's going on with the movement itself. But definitely the sentiment and the idea that I like when I hear the like Black Lives Matter, it's an assertion of the fact that like people have not been treated as human, and it's an assertion that like people like that everyone's lives should matter, including Black Americans whose lives have not been treated as if they matter.
So you pull it apart from the moment that we're in right now. So you said you don't see it in that same context. So what is it that how do you see it? I mean, like, so yes, we know historically Black and Brown Americans have had a hard time. So you got internment camps, you got Holocaust, you got slavery. You could just go on and on and on and on and on.
Of course.
Indigenous people, being dislocated from their
Mm-hmm.
native lands. You've got a whole bunch going on around us. So when you think about the context, because what I hear a lot of people say is that all lives matter. I think that's 100% true statement. All lives matter. I think
Yeah.
whether they're human or animal or whatever it is, all lives matter. It doesn't make a difference. If it's breathing, if God put it on the earth, it should matter. But
Right.
in the case of, where when you look at Black lives, and I mean, like, I can make an assumption. If I'm wrong, you can please correct me. But like, no one looks at you when you go into a department store to see if you're going to shoplift, or
Yeah.
no one, if the police rolls up behind you and turns on the blue lights, you're only going to worry about, how fast was I going, or did I have something wrong with my car? Whereas where for Black people, it's all of that and so much more, right? So you walk in the store and the minute you get in, may I help you? No, I'm just at the door.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
don't even know what I'm looking for. So that kind of thing. So when you said what you said, how you break it apart, tell me how it then comes back together to what's happening in our history and what's happening right now with this pandemic. More Black and Brown people are dying and being sick and affected by this virus, and the economic disparities in groups. And what's really amazing about the economic disparities is that that's not just affecting Black people now. I mean, like, we've got something like 40 million people who are unemployed.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For I guess the way I think about it is that Black Lives Matter is a sentiment or an idea, and the movement, like a movement of people, while it can espouse an idea, I think that like the just the like I think that it's a lot less clear, I think, what a movement is, because a movement, I think, can hold multiple ideas or ways of going about like disseminating those ideas. And I think that's where I kind of divorce the two, is that a movement can espouse an idea without the two being like inseparable.
That makes perfectly good sense. So, did you see on the news something what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, when they had the first, real protest where someone drove their car into the protesters and killed.
Yeah, I was watching the news when all of that was running.
And what did you think about that? What? Because this wasn't like an all black and all white. It was kind of a very diverse group of people that were out, you know, protesting, and some person thought that it would be nice to run those people over. I mean, like, how could that happen in a free society, in a democratic society? How could that happen?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. There was, and also with the, I guess, level of visibility of the kind of reactionary and like the neo-Nazi movement.
Yeah,
Um, and I think the only way that you can do something like that is if you really escape the idea of someone else's humanity. Like, if you if you somehow are able to not think about the fact that you are ending another life. And I think that, I guess I'd like to kind of extend that to, it feels like people are really looking at other people as like sides or like ideologies, I think, or classes, rather than extending each other empathy and having like a little bit of thought for other people.
yeah, very good point. So I'm going to bring you back to your current studies. Okay, so I don't know where in the computer science world you fall, whether you're in theory or practicum, where that falls. But McKinsey has a report, I think it came out in 2017, called The Future of Work. I don't know if you've read it or seen it, but it talks about what these emerging technologies are poised to do, right? So, like, um, if and I hypothesized this not too long ago. Could you imagine America where there were robots in the time of COVID, right? So machines that could go into the places and work, and they wouldn't have to shut down. You know, they would still have to social distance, but the business wouldn't be hurt. It's gonna be open all the time. It could be automated. You could fix things that
Yeah.
make it kind of work. So when you think about emerging technologies and broadly, specifically automation, machine learning, and all that, but more financial technology or fintech, all of these things that have, sometimes they're interconnected, and sometimes they're not. So if you take something like an algorithm, right? And so if you put in a certain zip code,
Mm-hmm.
and the algorithm spits out some data that says this is a high crime neighborhood, or this is a low poverty neighborhood, or whatever it is. There are
Mm-hmm.
certain conditions that are associated with that algorithm. So the person who lives there may go out to get a loan and find their interest rates are higher even if they have good credit, or they may
Yeah.
find out that they're going to get a job, and they went to a historically black school, they went to a school not a predominantly white school. All these kind of things kind of mesh together to create obstacles for people. And in the future of work by McKinsey, what's really interesting about that is it's not only just marginalized groups that will be affected by this, but even traditional middle class people will be affected by this, because
Mm-hmm.
if a tool can do it quicker with less flaws, you know, you have that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't know. I have, I think, mixed feelings. Like it's clear that to remain competitive, like it's great that we have technological advances. And it's great that, I guess, some things supposedly can provide like more security or like save time. Flip side, I think there's a lot of, like, I definitely have a lot of concern in terms of like the amount of data being gathered. And like there's obviously, like from what I've heard, like and read.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes. Your face is frozen, but I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, like just the essentially.
I can't hear you now. I cannot hear you at all. I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I can't hear you. I can't.
Let's see what's happening.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I don't know what just happened. Yeah, like there's like two sides to technology, and one's like the side of like progress and innovation and economic development, and there's the other side, which is algorithms can be biased. All of this can like all the data necessary to conduct all these analyses, like that requires a ton of data. That's all going to be collected from people. You don't know who has your data at that point, and that's still definitely a concern to me.
Absolutely. And even more, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, there was this thing about big brothers always watching, right? And it was, you know, some kind of one of those theories that the federal government was watching everything that we do. And now we're in that world for real, right? So every store you go in, every place you go, there are cameras that are watching your movements, right? And your phone gives you away, right? So, you know, unless you turn off location services or do something on your phone, you know, pull out your SIM card or something, everybody knows where you are. And they're collecting data every single day. And there are these data brokers who buy that data and massage it into something to result in either something great or something not so great. And for Black and brown communities, that's really often not so great.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's, of course, that's like a big concern with all the innovation that's coming out there. Like are there like has that been thought through really?
I think people are still trying to figure that out, right? So we know that there are biases in algorithms, and the machine learning is only as good as the person who created the code, right? The person who designed the system. That's as great as that. And if you bring bias in, if you bring, you know, wealth in, if you bring these constructs that actually disrupt, really disrupt, you know, then you are really introducing another layer of inequities among groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2015, Google released this facial recognition software. And every time it saw a person that wasn't exactly of a certain hue, it would present a gorilla. You know, I mean, these are the kind of things where being the only one of you in the room is why we have things like that happen, because I don't think Google had any intention for that to happen. I think that
Of course, yeah.
you know, they were designing a system, but if everybody in the room looks just like you're going to get the same outcome every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think talking about diversity really matters, but the question for me is not just always skin color, but diversity in gender, you know, diversity of ideas and thoughts, right? So if you went to Yale undergraduate school and your colleague next to you went to I don't know what you know, a community college somewhere, why we can't see both of those people as belonging in the conversation, right? So why doesn't the person who went to Yale and the person who went to community college? Because they're bringing different perspectives, and more times than not, when you have different perspectives, different ideas, different thoughts, you end up with a good product, right? So
yeah,
you know, and that's one of the things that I am concerned about with technology. And I really like to know how you feel about that and what you think going forward. Like, what are your thoughts about what will happen if you become a technology lawyer, right? So you are supposed to know all these things about technology and you're a lawyer. So you have these two moral obligations. How do you see them coming together? And what are your thoughts about where we go from where we are now and even further?
yeah, like in the sense that tech should be legislated, or in the sense that we should, like, in what considerations we might have for tech.
Well, so I've been in IT for 44,
Yeah.
45 years, and it's been a long time. And I'm still the only one that looks like me in most meetings, conferences I go to, most places like that. And my ideas and thoughts are not always supported, right? So if I say, hey, I think we ought to do this, it gets drowned down by the other voices, right? And then the
Hmm.
people who are in leadership roles, there was a woman who did a TED talk, and she talked about there are more men named John than there were women in leadership
Wow.
roles. Now, I mean, I don't know, John probably is a pretty common name, but even
Hmm.
that statement says something about our society, that there are more men named John than there are women in leadership roles, right? So,
Hmm.
as you are thinking about your career, what are the kind of goals or things you're kind of, process in your mind? What kind of hypothesis, thesis, or ideas are you going to run through that says, as a lawyer, I recognize that we have these things. So, for example, privacy, right? So, Constitution guarantees you some sort of privacy, right? So police can't just come and kick your door in. They
Yeah.
can't take your possessions and all that stuff. Well, there's another side of privacy too, right? So there's a part of how much of my life belongs to me.
Yeah.
So you, as a technology lawyer, may get a client that calls you out one day and says, company X has been selling my medical history to company Y, and I want to find out what that means and what do I do. So now you're a technology lawyer. You
Hmm.
understand the technology, you understand how that works, and you understand law. So now you've got a integration of two really large platforms, right? So law,
Yeah.
technology. How do you see that going forward in the future? What are your thoughts about this? Where are you? Where's your interest if that?
Yeah. Yeah. My interest is definitely in like the idea of protecting privacy rights and of advocating for that, and um attempting to establish some kind of like help establish some kind of accountability for companies that are interacting with sensitive data or data they could use to create things that will impact the lives of like a lot of people in significant ways. So yeah, like that's definitely an area of interest for me.
Excellent. So, one last question. So, do you have any thoughts about wealth, health, and environmental injustices in the society of the world? Not just America. Like, so we saw the Amazon forest was on fire for a long time.
Yeah.
They're cutting down trees every day. I mean, just to build more things. I mean, what is your thought about those pieces of our world?
Yeah, I think of course like almost everything globally is intertwined with wealth, and like how much influence you have in society largely depends on like how big of a player you are, which at least in America and I think in a lot of other countries it is dependent on like how much you donate to politicians or how just yeah, so like definitely the wealthier someone is, the bigger impact they're able to have, like the more influence they have in society, and that can be a problem when it creates a situation where a minority of people are benefited simply because they have more money, to the detriment of the majority.
Exactly. Okay, so we have 4 minutes. I'm leaving it all to you. Whatever you want to say, I'm listening.
Yeah. Thanks, Rochelle, for talking with me. Like, I really enjoyed the conversation. Like a lot of thought provoking points. And yeah, like it's just like the past couple months have been a lot to think about. And I think every day is about evaluating, for me at least, like evaluating like how to balance um like how to like filter through all the new ideas, and how to um like both improve and improve the way we treat other people without um like sacrificing anything that's good, like any values that we have.
So I'm really grateful you took this time to talk to me. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best in your career. I hope you go to Duke Law. Maybe too much Duke, but Duke undergrad and Duke Law, and get your law degree there. I think you'll find a lot of really knowledgeable, insightful faculty and staff and students there. So if you do decide to go, I hope you go there. And if you need me, all you gotta do is just reach out and I'll do whatever I can to help. And I'm very grateful for this. And so thank you for your time. Once the video is converted, I'm going to send you a link to it. You can look at it. And if you approve, you'll need to just say yes, you can upload it, or no, you cannot, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I hope you. You said you are going back. Are you going back? Are your classes? Do you know whether your classes are remote, or are you going to have in face-to-face classes?
We don't know yet. I think they're gonna tell us at the end of the week.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope whatever it is, you take care, stay safe, wear your mask, and all those other things we have to do to stay alive these days. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe.
You do the same. Bye.
Bye.